Hello my friends, welcome to the ThePCelitist, a channel dedicated to game reviews and commentary, always from the PC perspective, the greatest platform on which to play games. My name is Woodsie.
My name is Shepherd.
And today we're continuing our segment of The Case for PC, Part 2, Controllers Slap the Cuffs on Gameplay.
Book 'em, Joe.
And this is probably the most important aspect of consoleization, what you use to control your games.
If it's not the most important, it's the second most important. Kind of like I'm the most important part of this channel. If not me, you're the second most important.
I don't quite agree with your premise.
You and I aren't quite interchangeable. You reject my premise? Basically, it
already cracks.
Yes, we talked about in part 1, your console is a Camry, how consoles and PCs are designed differently to do different things, and that's the major crux of the argument between PC gamers and console gamers, is that they're designed differently. However, what we're going to talk about today is the other major piece that cannot be forgotten. You need both of these pieces to explain just how different PCs and consoles are.
Right. I want to start out this discussion with thinking about the evolution of games in general. You started out with excluding PC games when they're in their infancy. A lot of games developed on consoles, and if you just watch the development, as the games got more complex, the controllers followed suit.
Yes.
So obviously, the more complex the game, the more complex the controller you need.
Yes, you went from a directional pad, start, select, and A and B,
right,
to 4 shoulder buttons, 4 face buttons, 2 sticks, and a D-pad in case of, and then start and select are still there. God knows why select button or back button is still there,
which no one uses.
Yes, but you haven't, somewhere in the teens, anywhere from 12 to 14 to 16 buttons on a controller.
Right. Coming
from in the days when you had 4 buttons and a D-pad.
Right. And comparing that to a mouse and keyboard, which together you're looking at least 100 buttons.
Yeah.
So, and don't immediately go, no one wants to use 100 buttons. Well, I'm not asking everyone to use 100 buttons, but that does conduct the types of games that reach you. As a console gamer, as a PC gamer, there are genres that just won't get to your console because of how limited that piece of equipment is. So our point to this is that you cannot have more complex games on your console. It's completely stunted by the controller. Just
try playing StarCraft or any RTS or turn-based or Civilization. Just try playing that on a controller. You could, however, the wide array of buttons you could use would have to be laid out on screen, and you'd have to move a cursor around with one of the sticks, and then once you're hovering over that button, then you'd have to press it. I don't think anyone wants to spend that kind of time doing that.
Right.
You could make the argument, isn't that just what you're doing with a mouse? No, because you have a keyboard which can automate and hotkey all of those functions for you.
Right. You'll notice, I just thought of this. We hadn't talked about it before.
Off the cuff.
Right. There used to be a big deal in PC games to be able to manipulate items in-game, like pick them up, like pick up a vase, move it around, that kind of thing. And it was very cool because it was very virtual reality-ish.
Thank you, Valve.
Yeah. But Valve simplified it by using the grav gun, but it was very tactile before, and that kind of went away. Because you have such great 3D motion with mouse, keyboard, I could pick up a vase, back up, move it up to the top shelf, move forward, drop it, and you do that so easily. It's hard to do that on a controller. So those types of gameplay elements kind of disappear. The analogy we came up for this entire argument, in a sense, was with a bad tool, you're very limited to what you could do. As if you were a painter, someone said, paint the Mona Lisa, but you need to use a paint roller.
Yes, and 3 colors.
And 3.
Yeah, but basically, paint me a masterpiece. Sculpt me David. Here is a brick.
Right. Right. There's just very limited things you could do, and you brought up the genres. Now, this entire channel, even though we call it the ThePCelitist, and we love our PCs, I love them to death, I just love everything about them, it is an argument for more complex gaming in the end. We were talking about how there's just not complex gaming on consoles. Shepherd brought up the point of Gran Turismo.
Yeah, a game that the first one was pretty complex for the time. It didn't require you to be an avid, just engine hog, but you had to know something about cars.
Right. But the thing is, the cool thing about that game is it shows a very important example with consoles. And that is, like, the entire simulator style of game kind of went out the window when consoles came around. And it's not because people don't want to play it, because Gran Turismo sells very well.
Yeah, we do say a lot of bad things about console gamers, deservedly. But we don't think that they in general don't want sophisticated games. We think they do. And for us, the biggest proof of that is, as you look at Gran Turismo from 1 to 2 and then finally 3, which is, at the time by far the most advanced and sophisticated of any of those games, you had to know cars to enjoy that game. The sales of Gran Turismo 1, 2, 3 increased almost exponentially.
Right.
And so as the game got more narrowly focused, sales actually increased. And that's a phenomenon we don't really see very often at all. I mean, that was, almost a decade ago. But that kind of shows you that console gamers do like more advanced games, and they were able to make a simulator that could work on the console controller.
Right. And it's the only type of simulator I can think of that does work on a controller.
Yeah.
And it's extremely popular.
Yeah, if you're old enough to remember Jane's USAF simulator, which had a Bible as the user manual, you had not only to know planes, you had to use every one of those damn 100 keys on the keyboard.
Right.
A racing sim, as you said, really, we can't think of another sim that you could do on a console.
Right.
Strictly speaking, as good as the hardware can be, because of the limitations of number of buttons and complexity of the controller.
Right. And for whatever reason, Sony and Microsoft, when they first started moving into first-person shooters, there was a lot of people saying, will you ever make a keyboard and mouse peripheral? And they said, no, we don't want to make it. They do exist. Third-party ones do exist. But they said, we don't want to do it, and because we don't want it to look like a PC. We don't want it to look as complex as a PC. It's a game machine.
Yeah, and another thing, fundamentally, whether you want to admit it or not, if Microsoft or Sony came out with a peripheral, it would be almost tacitly admitting there is maybe a better way to do controls for a first-person shooter, for example. They could come up with an entirely new controller, and that would be different from PC, but to come out with a mouse and keyboard peripheral is basically saying, we're acknowledging mouse and keyboard are superior for certain types of gaming. And I think from a PR perspective, that's just not good. Right. I think that's one of the main reasons why they didn't do it.
And you might say, well, there's peripherals, so why don't they design games for peripherals? If it's not produced by the company, no one's going to design games for it because there's just not enough of them out there.
Yeah, and good luck telling gamers, you want to play this game? Go buy something else. Not from us, though. Go find it from someone else as well. Good luck.
Right. So when we talk about consoleization, most of the argument lies in how you control the game. There's a whole nother discussion about how accurate the mouse is in first-person shooters, the way you use a mouse, but everyone kind of knows that.
Yeah.
But the reason you're not getting more complex games on your consoles, and if you're a console user, and you're like, I'm tired of all these games, they're all the same, do you know why? Because your controller is the same.
Yeah, your controller has progressed. I mean, just like we were saying earlier with the painter, tell a painter to make a masterpiece, but only give him a paint roller.
Right.
Go to a game designer, who I'm sure are full of wonderful ideas left and right. Design us a game for our console, PS3, Xbox, what have you. Oh, sorry, it has to still conform to the controller we're currently using.
Right.
So as complicated and as wonderful as your game is, do it in 14 buttons.
You take like a game like Call of Duty, and you say, I want... The guys at Call of Duty are saying, well, we want the next Call of Duty to have a leaning, so you can lean around corners.
Like in Crysis.
That's incredibly complex to add in to a console game. You have to make like sticky walls, and you have to make a toggle key so you stick to the wall, and you have to have different hit... Like, it changes the game design. Unlike you take Crysis, and it's just E and Q, and that's it. I mean, there's no... It's just a view change, essentially. So if you're tired of your console games, you're like, well, there's no they don't do anything. They're the same every game. That's why. I think that's our point.
I think it is.
You guys go mull this over.
Let it simmer.
Let it simmer. Please comment. Please subscribe. if you enjoy the commentary on this channel. We plan to have a lot more videos ahead.
Really appreciate all the positive feedback we've been getting recently. Got a lot more subscribers, and yeah, really glad to connect with fellow PC gamers, people who are excited about the platform and the community. And so yeah, glad you guys like it so far, and we look forward to bringing you more.
Absolutely. Again, my name is Woodsie.
My name is Shepherd.
And this is the PC Elitist signing out.